Hey everyone, in this video we are going to be talking today about how to use GR Pottery Forms. So here are a few examples of the pottery forms that I have available for y'all to use in class. You can see that I have a variety of shapes, and several of these shapes actually stack onto each other, which can be utilized to form a shape that has a little bit larger of an edge. So what you would do is you would stack the shapes on top of each other like I've done right here, and then you can use painter's tape to tape them together to hold them together, the edges, and then you would drape your clay over this to give it a little bit of a deeper, larger edge, or you can use them individually. Here you can see that I have several round ones. These are great for making plates, small little ring dishes like this one right here. You can have like a little bit larger size. This one right here would make a great plate size. And then you get on to like the larger platter type sizes. But again, you could stack them together and use these forms with them taped to create an even larger or deeper type vessel. You do want to be really careful when you're handling these, because if you drop them, the edges will chip and break, which will greatly influence the outcome of your project and the craftsmanship. Here you can see a couple of final products that I've created in the past using these forms. This one right here, I rolled a texture template into the slab before I used the GR form. So there's lots of different options that you can use and get creative when creating art with these forms. Okay, so the first, you want to start off with a very evenly rolled clay slab. You are then going to take your GR form and make sure that it's going to fit the size of the slab that you rolled. If not, you're going to need to make sure that you roll your slab a little bit larger. I think that I want to make a little bit larger of a platter with a kind of shallow lip around the edges. So I'm going to use this GR form right here and place it onto the slab. Now, you'll notice that I don't have a ton of clay around the edges of the slab, and that's okay because I want kind of a shallow lip. If you wanted a longer lip or a deeper dish, another way of thinking about it, then you can trace further out around the clay slab. So now I'm using a cutting tool and cutting around the shape of the GR form, and I'm really using the form itself to help me achieve this shape. But like I said before, if you want to make sure that your shape is nice and smooth and you're making a deeper dish or larger lip, you can use a paper template and trace around the GR form and then kind of cut out an inch, maybe an inch and a half around it to make sure, and then place that paper template on top of your clay slab to make sure that your edges are nice and even and that you have a very clean, good craftsmanship within your shape. Now I'm just going to take my extra clay and wedge it together so that all the pieces don't dry out. So the next step is going to be to remove your form if you are using it to help you trace the shape. Now I'm going to use a rube tool to make sure that the surface of the clay slab is nice and smooth and to get rid of the texture of the canvas from running it through the slab roller. And you'll notice that I made sure to clean off the rib before I started to smooth it over the clay to make sure that it didn't scratch the surface of the clay and it's doing its job with smoothing. And I'm removing a little bit of clay at a time. I'm going to flip the slab over gently without pinching the edges and smooth this side as well. This clay is very soft at the moment, so we do have to be really careful because it's going to pick up any kind of little indent or texture. Now I'm just going to speed through and take some time to perfect these edges. Once your slab has been perfected, then you can take it and you are going to place it on this foam cushion. And then you can take your GR form, and let me position this a little bit better for y'all to be able to see. You're going to take your GR form that you've chosen, and this is the fun part. You're going to center the form over the slab. Now it's important that you get it positioned equal on all sides because this is going to affect the outcome of the dish that you make. And if you were to want texture in the slab, you will have already needed to press this into the slab before this process. You'll see that I take the form and rock it back and forth on all sides to help push the slab into the shape of the form to get my dish. Now I've just flipped it over, being careful to handle it gently this entire time. Now you can go back through, and if there's some areas where the slab maybe got a little messed up during the smushing process, you can go ahead and smooth all of that out. Now what we want to do is take this over to the hairdryer and dry it a bit so it can sit up leather hard and I can remove it off of the GR form. Okay, so now I've set it up a little bit. We never want to dry it too much because it can crack, and we're going to gently flip it over and pull the form off. And we have our shape of our platter. And you can see that it's still pretty soft, but it's holding the shape and the form of the platter, and the edges aren't drooping at all. If you have larger edges or a deeper platter, you may need to dry it for a little bit longer to keep the edges nice and stable. So now what I'm going through is I'm just kind of going through and smoothing out the edges again and making sure that the edges are shaped at an angle that I like. You can see how I'm supporting the edge as I go through and do that, because although this is leather hard, the clay is still pretty soft and malleable. It's very important that anytime you use a GR form to help get your shape, that you are not storing these on the form overnight, or that your clay is not sopping wet. The moisture from the clay will damage these forms if it's left on there for any extended period of time. It literally took me like 3 minutes to dry it with the hairdryer to get it to set up enough. So it's very important when you are using these forms that you are using them within one class period and then removing them before the end of the class period, to make sure that we're able to use these forms for many years to come and for lots of different projects. There are a lot of cool options that you can do to modify the dishes that you make, the dishes or the bowls that you create using these GR Pottery Forms. So one option would be to add handles to your project. You could also flip this over and add a foot to it to kind of class it up a little bit, make it look a little fancier. You can carve into the surface. I am smoothing the edges right now and getting everything very straight and perfect, but you might decide that you want wavy edges, and you can go in and manipulate the edges to make them wavy. You might even consider that when you are cutting your slab for the shape of the GR form. Just because the shape of the forms is nice and smooth, those edges, that doesn't mean that you have to cut your slab that way. So you can get really creative with the options, and this is a great way to produce and to produce quickly. but don't feel like you are stuck to these very simple shapes, even though you are using them to get your form. So think outside of the box and be creative with the way that you are utilizing these forms, and they can be a great tool for helping you create in the classroom.